The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this beautiful Wednesday morning when most of our kids are back to school or going back to school, right? We're right at the end of the summer. And you know that I love Wednesdays because we start every Wednesday with Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here. She's ready to answer your questions. You guys have started, each week you start a little bit earlier writing them in, so you were writing things in on Saturday. I love that. So we've got a bunch of questions, but we'll take a bunch more and we'll get through as many of them as we possibly can. And I see that you guys are putting more information in there, which is exactly what we need. So we're going to have that in just a couple of minutes, and then a program for you. Normally we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy directly after. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is not with us today, so we've made a decision to show you an oldie but a goodie of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's from last fall. And we have Dr. Andrew Wakefield talking about the Alex Spourdalakis case. This is very timely right now because next Wednesday, we're going to have a very special guest with us, one of the producers from the Dr. Phil show. They're getting ready to feature an entire segment on Kelly Stapleton, the mom who things got to such an extent that she tried to commit suicide and kill her daughter. She was unsuccessful at both. We're thrilled to be able to say that, but she is in prison and up on attempted murder charges. Dr. Phil is doing an entire show with her, so we're going to have that producer on to talk about this thing called filicide, when a family member tries to kill someone with special needs, and what is happening with that, because we're seeing that happen so much more often. So we covered yesterday that Dr. Wakefield is in the news. We thought it was timely on both ends to talk about Alex's case, because that will be discussed on Dr. Phil. And as we talked about yesterday with these rumors of a CDC whistleblower. So that will be in the second hour today. I want to remind you at the start of this show that everything we do here, we hope to be interactive. We want you to be a part of the conversation, to add to what's happening here, to really drive the bus, if you will. So Kelby is going to cycle through some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us here on the show, different ways that you can write in a question, ask a suggestion of something that you'd like to see on the show, raise arguments about things that you do want to see or that you don't want to see. We want all of your opinions. So Kelby's showing you all the different ways you can get in touch and watch the show. I will remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. You can go there, participate in so many different ways, including watching the live show. And to the side of that, there are a series of white boxes. Put your cursor in the box that says your question, and that's really all you have to do besides typing. You don't have to log in. Nobody is asking for your name, your address, or your credit card. There is no cost for this. Participate at will. We love having you be a part of the conversation and be a part of the family. So without further ado, let's get started. It's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Good morning and welcome. It's time for Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us in the studio.
Good morning.
So thrilled to have you here this morning.
Thank you.
We've had so many questions already written in. I can't wait to get to them. But before we do, want to make sure that everybody out there who's watching knows, we always say this at the start of the show, that you are an expert in the field of autism, a true expert in the field of autism and a visionary. But having said all of that, you still can't give child-specific advice in this format.
Right.
we just can't know enough about a child, even when you guys write in, and you've written in some lengthy things today, which I love, but we still can't know enough about the child for child-specific advice because it would be a disservice to the individual. Am I correct?
Right, and it would be unethical. I mean, I don't want to really guide you without knowing as much as I need to about your child. So we'll just give you some general pointers and guidance, and in most cases, obviously, I will refer you to a professional or to some other source where you can get more information.
But having said that, there are so many things that you know that we don't know. And you give us a window into that, and it helps inform us about which direction to go next.
Right.
And I think it helps to calm our anxiety.
Yeah, it's a different, I just have a different perspective. It's not that I know, I mean, you know, parents I think know more than anyone, but I just have a different perspective because I've seen thousands of individuals over the years and learned a lot from each one, or as many as I've interacted with, and a lot from the families, and I've kind of grown with the science for, you know, 30 somewhat years. So just a different perspective on autism and everything that relates to it. So hopefully it's a helpful one.
It's so helpful, and we so appreciate you.
Thank you.
And that your expertise and you taking the time. Okay, I want to start here and jump in with a question from a viewer who watches quite a bit. Hi, Dr. Doreen. My son is 3 years, 10 months, has been with CARD for 10 months. He used to script ABC show. He scripts shows. It's out of control. Also, the echolalia is massive. We thought he scripted when he was nervous or when asked to do a task, but now he does it throughout the day. Yesterday, I noticed that he repeats his answer, for example, yes, 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 yes. Seriously, where did this come from? I'm not understanding why this is happening if we keep providing him with alternative speech. Is there something medically that increases this behavior? He's on a great diet, biomedical intervention, and he sleeps great. I'm so stressed because this is conflicting with therapy. When we call his name, he looks at us and says, no silly talk, but yet he continues. Please help.
So your CARD client, I should probably have our clinical director, Evelyn Kong, talk with whoever your supervisor is. This is not, it's you know, scripting of this nature is to some extent avoidance behavior because you will repeat something and that will delay the actual answering or responding to whatever, or, you know, performing the demand that's being asked. But no silly talk won't work. At this point, I think we need to change intervention and most likely start timing the duration of the answer and only teach him to discriminate between one answer versus numerous repetitions of the same answer. Don't worry about it. You know, I always say echolalia or scripting or verbal stuff increases and then you shape it. So it makes sense that it would increase. He's getting a lot of intervention, I assume, right now because he's a young child. And so part of that is in the beginning our kids start to respond sort of a lot, and it doesn't, and then later you form it into the appropriate type of response and interaction. So initially it's just a bunch of stuff, and sometimes it seems very robotic or very repetitive or out of context, or, you know, all these different things, and those are the things we fix. But it's not a major thing. It really is a different, like, this is the number one thing I would tell your supervisor, is to actually visually prompt one-word response versus multiple-word response. And so you ask him, and I don't know what his lessons are, I would throw it into one of his lessons, actually, verbal imitation or something. Or I don't want to do it in verbal imitation. I'd actually do an expressive response, like labels or something like that. And then you would require him to respond with one, and you'd stop it. You'd literally stop him versus many, and then he would say it many times. He'll get the difference. He'll understand when you repeat something versus not. So don't be concerned. This happens quite a bit, and we can fix it. So I would suggest that you just have your supervisor send me an email.
There you go. Great, great advice. And I just want to remind everybody that it's a natural course of things that as parents we get anxious about a new behavior or something, and it feels like I once described it to our supervisor that because my son lost skills at some point, any time where we would have to go back over something that had been in maintenance and had to be brought back into a program, I would have
Well, that is
a
the
reaction.
scariest, absolutely, and that is a very scary experience, much more scary than what you're going through, what this viewer is going through, because when your child is accelerating and then suddenly they stop and start losing stuff, then you really get concerned because you're wondering what's going on with their memory, why aren't they retaining? But it isn't. It's sort of like growth spurts.
Yeah.
You know how your kids, like typically developing kids, they will, they'll have periods of time where they're eating, and they grow this way, and then all of a sudden they'll grow that way. So it's the same kind of thing. Their language will expand this way, and then we shape it to what it should be.
Yeah, and so I just want to say to you that it's normal that we as parents have anxiety a bit when things are doing all those wonky little twists and turns, and it's really good to get yourself in a good support group with parents that you can talk about so that they can hold your hand too and say, we went through that, you're going to get through this, it's going to be okay. Because if I could do one thing over again, I used to say this about my pregnancy because we had a miscarriage, and so when we were pregnant with Jem, I was worried the whole time. And if I could do one thing, I would go back and not worry and know that we were going to have a baby and that it was all going to be okay. If I could do one thing about autism is go back and look at all those times when I was such a worried mom that I wasn't seeing what was happening and have a worry-ectomy.
I know. I think we all feel that way, though,
Really?
with our kids. Well, I mean, I don't just think about, I wish I could go back and stop worrying, but I also think I wish I could go back and, I guess, not take it too seriously.
Enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy more.
The moments.
Yeah, enjoy
I love
more.
watching the A Word now because I watch as Jack Riley goes through things and I get to feel the joy of it, because when my son would hit milestones, I would be so busy worried about the next thing that sometimes I didn't quite celebrate the moment.
I can understand that. Understand that. And I, as a behaviorist, sort of had this feeling that my kids had to be what I need them to be, and if they weren't, then that meant I wasn't doing something right, and that's not a good thing. So, but and that's fine, because thank God it all worked.
And they're perfect.
And they're great. But it was stressful. Some of it was stressful. Like getting my little one to sleep was stressful. Getting my middle child to eat was stressful. Some of it was just like, okay, this isn't actually happening as easily as it should. It's taking more energy than I wanted. But,
which is really the reality for all of us.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Everything is exhausting. That's why I always say, like with our supervisors at CARD, I'm happy that they're aging, because they're all having kids and they're all beginning to realize how difficult it is. This stuff that we tell parents, you really need to live it.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let us know how things go and make sure that you email your supervisor to talk.
Please do, because now it'll be in my mind, and if I don't hear from a supervisor, I'll be concerned.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, there we have it. Okay, next question. Good morning, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. I love your show. We're trying to reduce the amount of time my adult daughter spends in the bathroom at day program and at home. She has a timer set for 15 minutes, and she takes it in with her. But when it beeps, she just ignores it and says she's hurrying and can be in there for up to 45 minutes. At day program, she's in a stall with just a toilet. How can we get her to respond to the timer? And thank you.
Well, and thank you. That's a good question, and I appreciate that they're trying to use a timer, but the timer is useless unless someone actually forces her to exit at the time of the timer. So you now have two choices. You either need to, and I don't know her size, but she's an adult, so this might be difficult. You basically now need to do one of two things. Either you have an individual access her, and I mean get into the stall, physically maneuver her to get up and get ready and leave, or come out when the timer buzzes, which is 15 minutes. So this is option one. This will result in her not being too thrilled about it, obviously, and she will probably have a little bit of a tantrum or so, and it doesn't really matter. Then you need to ignore the tantrum, maneuver her through washing her hands, for instance, and then give her a pretty significant reward. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to get a baseline of where she actually is right now. You said 45 minutes sometimes, so you would then have to have one of the people or someone measure the time over the course of a week. Every time she goes in. Then you'd have like, I don't know, 10 or 15 measurements, and then you would average those, and that would be your baseline. So that means on average, it takes her maybe 30 minutes. She's in there 30 minutes. You take away the timer. If you keep the timer there while this is happening, she's ignoring it, and the value of the timer goes down. And actually, either option you use, apply a new timer, use a new timer, because that's pretty much lost its stimulus value. It's not a signal to her anymore. She just learned to ignore it. So the second procedure I'll go on, now you have a baseline, so let's say on average it's 30 minutes, or on average it's 40 minutes. I don't want to pick the longest one, which is the one you were talking about, but the average. And then now you have a new timer, and that's, you keep the timer. And so she goes in, and when it hits, let's say 30 minutes, you will ring the timer, and then you will go in, get her, and bring her out. The next day, same thing. The next day, same thing. And very gradually, so like let's say the second, third day, you make it 29 minutes. The fourth, fifth day, you'll make it 28 minutes, 27, 26, and you will gradually reduce the timer, but it is always, it's still under your control, and you are still going and actually getting her to come out, and you're gradually reducing the time frame to the time frame you like, which, by the way, 15 minutes is a little bit too long too. But anyway, you pick a time that's appropriate, and the key, and then when you hit that, obviously you now will really reward it, and now you will hand her the timer, and then you will make sure that it occurs when she has the timer, and you will always reward her for staying with the timer, and then you will gradually reduce the rewards. Now, what I'm trying to say is there's some key features to what you tried to do that were forgotten, and that's why the procedure lost effect. One key important factor is that the timer, responding to the timer, has to be rewarded. So when she's and if she doesn't respond to the timer, you need to go back and make sure she does. Okay, so that otherwise, if it goes once or twice that she's not responding to the timer, and nothing happens, she's learned that the timer doesn't matter. Right. Okay, so but the way to keep the timer effective is that initially, every time she responds to the timer, and initially keep in mind you're making that happen, you're modeling it. Then gradually you're just standing there, and gradually you're standing further away. So, and then gradually you're outside the door, and you're just timing it, and you want to make sure that what happens is you start with what's called a continuous schedule of reinforcement. So you will reinforce every time that she meets the timer. Okay, great. Then you'll gradually start to vary that. So you'll not first reinforce every second time, then you'll reinforce every third time, then you'll reinforce every second time, third time, fifth time, fourth, and that's called a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. And it's the most effective that never extinguishes. So in other words, she will always think, I need to respond to the timer, because eventually that reward's coming, and she won't know when it's coming.
I call that the slot machine reward.
Exactly.
Because you don't know when it's going to hit the jackpot.
That's exactly right. Slot machines
But you keep putting the quarters in because you know eventually you're going to get rewarded.
Slot machines are on a variable ratio schedule. That's exactly right. So you will, that's what you need to do, and then the timer will really never lose value.
Okay. Great advice.
It's a little bit tough, and if you... that's the kind of thing that behavior analysts are pretty good at, this type of stuff. So if you know a VCBA, they can really assist you in terms of writing it out for you.
Well, and she's in a day program, so hopefully there's supports that can help carry it out. I know it's questionable sometimes.
Yeah, we train people in various day programs, and it takes half a year just to get them to comply with what we suggest. It's hard.
Make them take the RBT. I'm doing the RBT right now.
you doing it?
I am.
Good for
very
you.
slowly. Because I got a couple other things on my plate. But I'm very slowly doing it, and it's so good.
It's fun. You know this stuff, Shannon.
Oh, no, but I'm learning new things.
Well, that's
I'm
good.
learning
That's
new things.
great.
It's really good. But you could encourage somebody at the day program to do the RBT and say, hey, and the benefit is you're going to get, you'll be a
That's
registered
awesome.
Behavior technician, and then they'll be better at dealing with
That's
these kinds
great.
of things as well.
Are you doing it through IBT?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Oh, of course, through
Yeah,
IBT,
yeah, they started,
ibehavioraltraining.com.
yeah.
Oh,
That's awesome.
the videos are so good, and I'm learning so very much.
That's wonderful.
It is wonderful. In any case, we're going to take, and you can find that, by the way, if you want to do the RBT, it's at ibehavioraltraining.com, and there are different settings, but there's one for RBT, which stands for Registered Behavior Technician. Really so informative. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with more of your questions for Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Don't go anywhere.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity of treatment.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have with us in the studio right now Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. She's a true expert and a visionary in the field of autism. So thrilled to have you here answering questions.
Thank you.
You can be writing your questions in right now at autism-live.com. I want to take one that's a follow-up. We always tell you guys that if you write us back and let us know what happens, and you've been doing that this week. So we had a question last week about hair cutting, and so they said the haircut question follow-up, and they go on to say, my son was obsessed with long hair when he was younger. The haircut thing, because all he's wanting to do is cut hair, for those of you who weren't here last week. And I believe he was 13, if I remember correctly. So she goes on to say the haircut thing started seeing the transformation of a celebrity from having long hair to super short hair. Then he YouTubed cutting short hair. Tonight, tried the paper cutting craft, because that was one of the things that you had recommended, is instead, give him something else to cut. And then she goes on to say at the end, he still snipped at the paper pretending he was cutting hair. We also did some paper fold cut test problems, which we happened upon on YouTube. Those sound kind of fun. That kept him engaged for a while, and we tested the solution by folding and cutting. Still can't figure out the function of this behavior. If he is engaged somehow, the behavior is temporarily gone. Would it help if we do a social story of the weirdness factor, but also don't want him to feel shame, working on boosting his self-esteem? We also tried to get him to trim the shrubs in our garden, didn't fly. We'll continue to try different textures and maybe just keep him busy, because that was one of the things that you talked about last week, about finding the thing that satisfies, the thing that's the right texture that satisfies the desire to cut hair, and channeling it in a good way.
Right, and you have to understand it could be a completely different function. Like this is when I wish I knew these kids that you're writing about, but he sounds pretty high functioning, and you should go back to looking at, thinking about that celebrity haircut and what occurred with the celebrity haircut. I'm not sure if the celebrity, I assume, was very thrilled or happy. I mean, he could be wanting to play the role of the hair cutting person in that video because they were I don't know, applauded because they got a lot of attention. He could be trying to, thinking that by cutting hair he's going to make the person happy. I'm not sure what he's, so in other words, the function of behavior doesn't necessarily have to be a sensory one. It could also be how it makes him feel. So you just need to think more about that. And I can't really advise you more because I really don't know and I'm not there to see it. But do consider, if you do write a social story, I wouldn't really write a social story about it being weird. I would write a social story probably about how an individual might not like their hair when it's cut. So in other words, sadness coming about from it. Because if he has empathy, then he will probably not want to do it after that.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah, like being disappointed with the haircut or something like that. Again, I would do whatever is the opposite of that video that he saw.
So keep us posted and let us know how that works for you. I want to do another follow-up here. Hi, Shannon. Thanks to you and Dr. Doreen, we signed on to Skills.
Oh, awesome.
What a comprehensive tool that breaks down skills needed into manageable steps. Can't wait to get started on the actual work. And they go on to say, this is the 13-year-old 8th grader on the giggle advice, the person who was giggling a lot last week. Dr. Doreen said to put a timer on the task. This time it wasn't giggles, but clear task avoidance, and it was piano practice. Told him to give a strong 5-minute focus and done. And she said, wow, he did and started to enjoy the music too. Follow-up question on social skills. Should we work on acquiring the skills first or get them in a group setting as much as possible? Watching some of the other videos, they said, you asked great questions, Shannon. Thank you. Temple Grannon, Eustacia gave a lot of food for thought. Amazing work on the archives, which is mostly for Emily. Listing Dr. Doreen questions and marking the time when the question is answered. Thanks for breaking it down to make it easier to digest. You give us hope, and thank you. I don't know if you know, but every time you answer a question, it has a time code. So for those of you watching it on the YouTube, you go to the top of Ask Dr. Doreen. It lists the questions, and when you see the question you want, you click on it. It takes you right there.
I know, it's fabulous.
It's a lot of work.
Really, Emily has done an amazing job with that.
It is amazing.
So I would say that completely lost what the question was. There was like 50
because there was a lot of things in there, but they loved the advice. But the social skills.
I'm thrilled that you're into skills. Like, I'm very, very excited about that. You sound like the type of parent that will really enjoy skills, and it is a very comprehensive tool, and it's very complicated, and a lot of times I think people give up because it's so complicated. But you know, human being is complicated, and we're trying to like help parents and users teach everything that a child needs. So that's number one, and I'm really thrilled about the fact that you're involved with that and that the timer thing worked for you. There was one question in there
about social skills, about should they start working on the lessons first or go to the group setting?
Yeah, I would really start working on lessons first. My personal, and so. And I won't say, I'm not implying that you should work on a lesson or number of lessons and then keep your child isolated from everyone for the next year until you manage those lessons. Not at all. But it's kind of, you know, both are good. So it's sort of like learning a second language. You want to have some basic skills, and then of course being infused in that activity or in the community or in the city where they speak that language is also extremely helpful. But if you don't have the basic skills, being thrown into a community of people who are speaking that language becomes frustrating and aversive. So it's the same type of thing. It's like if you're going to throw your child into a social setting, at least teach some of the basic understanding so that and introduce the child in small spurts. So, you know, kind of what we do is, obviously we have usually the benefit of having a lot of intensive hours. So I'll work, let's say, intensively on a concept, like, let's say I want to do social communication. So I'll do social communication, and breaks into several different lessons, right? So there'll be lessons about, you know, how to approach so it has prerequisite lessons as well. This is why skills become so complicated. So, you know, my goal is for my child to go into a school's playground, to join a group of kids and converse with them appropriately. That's my goal. Now, this requires several different sets of skills. The first being my child has to identify the group and actually listen. And when I say identify the group, that means my child has to identify these are the people I want to become friends with, or these are people I want to interact with, and actually be able to listen to what some of their interests or subjects are, so that, and then actually be able to come up with some topic that fits into that area or is of interest. And then once you've done all of that, and that's sort of setting stuff, it's kind of identifying the setting, identifying the audience, all this kind of pragmatic stuff. Then once you've done that, then the child has to be able to identify or figure out how to introduce a topic and join the group. So join the group, introduce a topic. So I can teach my child those things and then practice that, right? But then I should probably be nearby, because I still haven't taught my child things like, what if they make fun? What do you do then? What if they all look down and start walking away? What do you do then? What if the topic changes? What if nobody's interested in what you're talking about? So there's all these other things that I will teach you, and they're all part of social communication, and they're coming. They're SD4 and more advanced parts of that lesson. But for now, I just want to make sure what you practiced was successful. So you kind of can infuse the person, but you need to give them some basic social skills first. And by the way, please also make sure that you do, when I integrate or mainstream my kids, I will often, I want the other kids to know, because it's much more important it's much better if they know rather than they don't, because you tend to have a tendency for children these days still to bully and to mock when they don't know. But when you talk to them ahead of time, the other kids, and you say, he has issues with language, this and this, and I need you guys to help me because this is what I want you to do, and so on and so forth, then they actually become what we call confederates, and they sort of join the team, and they will then really work for you. And so I think those types of things are very important as well initially, because by the time your child will change schools multiple times and eventually will have the option of being with kids who don't know his or her history. But when you're introducing an individual to social settings, it's very important that the everything go right, because if you have a circumstance where the individual kind of has a bad experience, it's harder to change that and fix how it made them feel.
And kids are so much better at this than adults are.
Oh, yeah.
When you say to a kid, hey, can you help him out because, and you don't have to disclose everything, right? You
Absolutely.
don't have to tell him, but if you say to a kid, hey, can you help him out because he needs some practice in doing this, that, and the other, the kid is on it. The kid doesn't ask you questions. So what exactly is the diagnosis and what do you do? The parent will, but the kid goes, sure.
Sure, I'll help,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they're so much more open and accepting. Kids are great.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could all stay in kid mentality, right? And because they're so accepting. They accept what is.
Yeah.
We rail against it and try to package it. And
it really has to do with kids reflect their parents to a large extent, right?
Really?
So I think so. And I think that kids can be not so great if they haven't been treated fair or well.
True. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
But we wish you luck with that.
Yeah.
Thrilled that you're working on skills.
Yeah, enjoy.
I never disagree with you, but I'm going to disagree with you on one thing.
Please.
I don't think that skills is complicated. I think that skills is complex. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we talk about it being a tool, I want to talk about it more about being a toolbox. Yeah. I think that what happens is when parents go to it, they go, I'm not sure what to do first because they don't know which tool to use.
Right.
And so, the hardest thing about skills is there's so many things there to use that you may not need them all.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then you pick which tool you want to use first, and then later on you can use the next tool. Right. But I think once you pick a tool, there's nothing complicated about it. Right. It's just that there are so many tools in the toolbox.
It's true. And I really would like to, this is on our help desk ticket, right? It's a ticket. I want to change the whole look of skills, the website entry, what is it called, the dashboard, because I do think that there are ways that you can make it more simple for people to understand. There's a lot of really good stuff, and it's all sort of listed on the left column, and you don't really you don't even see where it says progress charts. You know, there's so many good things, but quite honestly, it takes a lot of money to fix the look of these things and change a dynamic web feature like that, and so it's kind of on hold. But you know, and if there are any viewers who are people whose specialty it is to do that, please contact me. We can use your help. I really do want to change the design though, and the look of it, because I agree with you, and I think there's just a lot on there. For me personally, if it was my child, I would really want to I would love to be able to make my own dashboard. Yeah. Like be able to put on there all the graphics that I want, where I want to see, when I open it, I want to see his behaviors, and I want to see his rate of acquisition, and maybe I want to see all the medications. I don't know. I would be able to make my own, and maybe appointments, and then, you know, all the things like that. I'd really like to have that.
That sounds wonderful. All right. Well, I hope that happens, and if you're somebody who is a great graphic artist, web designer person, be in contact. Okay, moving on to, we were just talking about a 13-year-old. We're going to go to the other end with a kindergartner. Somebody wrote in and said, to spare my kindergartner from being bullied or being labeled weak by peers, how can I give him a survival checklist of who to avoid? Yesterday, I hurt his feelings playing back my interpretation of a play period with a child in his school. I saw that despite my child verbalizing, because they said, yay, his desires to have the other child take a turn to be it in the very long game of tag, the other child would not give in and eventually started to become verbally aggressive with my son, saying shut up and some gruesome things he would do to my child. My child seemed to think that it went rather well, and they wrote,
Yeah, it's gosh, you know, I often say that our kids are so sweet. They just never learn, you know, meanness of any kind. I don't know that I would. I mean, you can certainly. It's to me, it's harder, and it's early. It's harder to teach your child how to identify, I guess, bullying or mean behavior towards him. It is a very hard thing to do, and I'm not sure I would do that. I would wait to do that until much later. I would really not do it in kindergarten. I really wouldn't, because it's you're pinpointing the faults of human beings, and I don't want your child to learn those things, because our kids, you know, our kids on the spectrum tend to just be the sweetest and loveliest people, and they're very pure in some ways, and I don't want to really say these are horrible things you should stay away from. And believe me, if he starts to, we do tend to stay away from things that we recognize as being bad. You don't really want him to misrecognize now and start thinking all kids are bad and I should stay away from them or they will hurt me. It's better if he's still interested in kids. What I would do is I would go in and try to change the kids. That's what I would do personally. I would go talk to the teacher. I would go in, I would give a really major lecture to the whole class about bullying, about what it is, what does autism mean. I would make sure that the other kids understand that autism doesn't mean mental retardation, that autism means special types of skills, that autism, that people would, I would actually show some of the people who have ridiculous talents, you know, like the person who can draw visual maps from an airplane, or the person who is like amazing on the piano. And so I would find 4 or 5 of those things on YouTube, for instance, and show them to the whole class. I would present the cool side of autism, essentially, and then I would specifically point out, like, the other day this happened. You wouldn't necessarily name who it was, but they would know who they were, and you would make sure to like say, so you should give the kids some sort of reinforcer and say, so when this happens, this is what you guys can do to help. These are ways you can help him. And I would really seriously do that. I mean, and you might, obviously you don't want your child to be there that day perhaps, but I would really work on the other kids, because I've seen classrooms where other kids become your friends and your, I guess they join your team and they really, really want to help, and oh my God, it's like you have 10 little helpers all of a sudden. And then I've seen classrooms where there's a lot of bullies, and our child either does recognize that they're bullying him, which depresses our child, or doesn't recognize that they're bullying him, which, in some ways endangers our child. So this is where you need to intervene, and I think it's important to talk to the teacher and try to talk to all the class.
I will say that for Jem, it was later, it was in first grade, that they worked on, there's a lesson in skills called levels of friendship.
Yeah.
And that was helpful to him, but it was a little bit later, so maybe that's down the road for you, where he could identify, because he didn't want to hate one of the kids, but what he identified was that wasn't, that there were levels of friends, and that he had good friends that he could trust, and some friends that were just friends that you say hello to.
Yeah. So levels of friendship has actually also like acquaintances and friends, then family and parents and so on, and it does show you that you have different levels. And really, if your child's understanding is at that level, great, go ahead. But I caution it, because it just concerns me that, because you never want to really teach your children too early about the bitter aspects of life.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Okay, so we've got a question here about a 7-year-old. Hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. My daughter, age 7, is freaking out, in quotations, when experiencing different emotions, especially when things break, fall, or someone sneezes or coughs in a class or in any environment. Not too far ago, we were working on using her nice words, so we were told not to pay attention to bad behavior, but we are not sure how to address her freaking out, since it seems she is in distress without giving negative attention. Any help, please, is greatly appreciated. You're amazing, and we truly love you.
That's so nice. Thank you. I would need to know a little bit more about this. So what I'm envisioning, help me, Shannon, you often interpret these things appropriately. So let's see, she's freaking out, which I don't really know what that means. When she
it sounds like it's attached to, because she says when things break, fall, someone sneezes or coughs, which to me all have a disruptive sound.
Yeah, exactly. Sudden entrance of a vocal stimulus, but I don't know how she's freaking out. Like, is she showing fear? Is she...
well, it says she appears to be in distress. I wonder if it's a thing where there's a scream and a covering of ears.
Exactly. So in other words, her startle reaction is dragging on, or is a little bit too intense. That's kind of what I'm getting from it. Okay. So, and if that's the case, habituation is the way to deal with that. So you basically will give her control. So you would record each of those sounds, and then give her access to a recording where repetitively, right? So the sound has to be repeated within, let's say, so you would have, let's say, a cough, and then wait maybe 5 seconds, and then another cough, and so on and so forth. So she has the ability to increase or decrease the volume herself, and she can control by playing or stopping. So once she has a little bit of control, then you just increase the duration of time and the volume. And cough is probably one of the lowest in terms of startle. The other, sneezing, if it's someone who sneezes really loud, gosh, it startles me too. It's one of those things I can't handle either. It's like, there are people who sneeze really loud.
Really loud.
So that's essentially, you give her control and you allow her to gradually habituate to the volume, so that you will increase the volume gradually. And I would say, what was the other one? Sneezing, coughing?
Something breaks or falls.
Breaking and falling. it's all startle reaction. It's all just startle. And, you know, the behavioral component of it is that the more she's exposed to it and the more control she has over it, she won't panic as much when it happens. The other side of it is that physiologically, that sympathetic activity that you know, your autonomic nervous system triggers when you're startled, and you go into, that's when you go into that fight or flight mode, right? So you will need to teach her ways to deactivate and to activate the parasympathetic and to calm down. And so, strangely enough, believe it or not, one of the things that activates the parasympathetic is body rocking. I'm not saying teach her how to body rock, but teach her a calming mechanism. For instance, walking away and deep breathing and counting. Literally, you know, when people will just put their head down for a few seconds and then move up, or stretching, that sort of stuff. Teach her to de-escalate, because she might just physiologically have a very, very rapid activity of the sympathetic nervous system. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, I've got a big, long question that's going to take a minute. So do you want to take a break first before we get to this? Or you want to dive in?
Let's go for it.
Okay. Okay. Hi. Can you help break it down for me? What's the difference between DTT, NET, FBI, PRT, and RDI? Trying to get started on skills. We used to do ABA, and it was just called ABA years ago.
Awesome. Hold on. Let me write all of the ones down.
Okay. So it's DTT, NET, FBI, which I think they mean,
Fluency?
No, I think they mean functional behavior
assessment.
FBA.
Okay.
I think I always say FBI and get it wrong. Sometimes it's FBA. I think that's what they mean. PRT and RDI. Trying to get started on skills. We used to do ABA. It was just called ABA years ago. RDI wasn't listed on skills, but figured you would know. Thanks for sharing your immense wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Okay, here we go. You ready?
Yes, right. Strap in. Here we go.
Let's talk about RDI first, because it's not part of ABA.
Okay.
RDI stands for Relationship Development Intervention, I believe. It has nothing to do at all with ABA, and it is a technique, or I don't even know that I would call it a technique. It's a sort of a protocol that was developed a few years ago, and the concept of it is that you essentially, it's a training that the person teaches a parent how to engage with the child and develop a relationship with the child. So, you know, I don't know all that much about RDI because I'm not RDI trained, but really it has to do with various things that you as a parent would do in order to kind of engage the child, get into the child's world, and then try to get the child's attention that way, and then have the child kind of come into your world. And I think that's probably the best I can describe it. Do you know more about RDI that you can say?
I know some people who have done it, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's really looking at it from the parent point of view, and it's training the parent.
Right.
I think that's the key.
Right. So, and I will tell you, if I was starting with my child and trying to figure out what to do, I probably would not spend too much time on RDI. I would head straight into ABA, which is the science that has been approved, which is why it's funded. RDI is not funded. ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. The concept of ABA is basically that if you want to increase a behavior, you reward it. And if you want to decrease the behavior, you remove all possible rewards from it. It is really that simple. A whole ton of different procedures have been developed around this concept of operant conditioning, which is, you know, anything that's rewarded will increase and anything that's not rewarded won't increase, will decrease actually. And so all of those techniques fall under various types of ABA. DTT, discrete trial training, was really the first form that was studied and published, and that's what we did with Lovaas in 1987. If you want to learn more about that, you should pull up the 1987 Lovaas, L-O-V-A-A-S study, which I don't even remember the title, but it was
the Young Autism Project, isn't it?
Well, that was the project. That was our clinic at UCLA. Originally it was called the Young Autism Project, then we changed the name of the clinic and called it Clinic for Behavioral Treatment of Children. But the article, the paper, was called normal intellectual and something else functioning in children with autism or something like that. And it was, I mean, if you just Google Lobos 1987, it'll come up. It was the #1 paper that changed the whole world of autism, really.
And you were there. You were.
We
part
did
of
it.
that.
We were. Yeah, I was one of the. I did a lot on that paper actually. And if you can find the videos. There's films. You can order the video, and it shows all the kids, and it'll show how we did intervention, and it shows the results. And the results of that study showed that 47% of the kids recovered from autism. We only did DTT. That's what we did in those days. And DTT is a procedure. It's called discrete trial training, and the procedure is very, very basic. So I want to teach pen. What I do is I place the pen in front of the child initially, and this is just an example. So this is what's called let's say, a receptive lesson, and it would be called receptive labels back in those days. And I will put the pen in front of the child, and I will say touch pen. That's an instruction. We call that instruction an SD. So the first portion of your instruction is SD, discriminative stimulus, which is written in ABA language, SD. So touch pen is my SD, that's sort of the instruction. Then I give the child a certain period of time to respond, and then the child will, let's say, not touch the pen. They'll be looking around. And so I now have to finish my trial. My trial started with the SD. The child's response or non-response is the R, which is the response. And then I have to consequate it with something, which would either be good if the child did the correct thing, or no, which would be information to the child that you didn't get it right. Now that's the basic discrete trial, and then there's other features obviously, which is I would put it closer to the child. I'd take the child's hand and put it on it when I said touch pen, and those are called prompts. So the discrete trial really consists of an SD, a response, and a consequence, or an SR, reinforcer, a stimulus reinforcer, and then various other features like a prompt that's attached to the SD and so on. So you do that. So essentially discrete trial training is you take everything you want to teach the child, whatever it is, small or big, mega lessons that could be advanced social lessons, and you break the whole thing down into very short and concrete and specific discrete trials, and you teach them using that technique. The technique requires, the one that we used to use back in the Lobos day, was that you would introduce, and this is the original discrete trial, you give the child 2 times the instruction, and if they don't get it correct, you prompt on the 3rd trial. This makes sure that the child will receive a reinforcer, will be correct every 3rd time, so 30% of the time, so that they don't get too upset or disappointed in themselves. So that's what a discrete trial is. Now, there was a lot of criticism about if discrete trial will generalize. In other words, if it produces kids that look like robots, or if we are able to teach the kids to actually use all these skills in a natural environment. And so one of the things was that once the child had learned, for instance, the stimulus that I was teaching in discrete trial, then I would want to make sure he can identify the pens of different types in different settings, and it was given by different people, looking differently, would know what the pen is used for, with all these other things surrounding it. And so in order to do a lot of that sort of stuff, people started doing natural environment training, NET. And natural environment training is just a generalization procedure. It's sort of, you take a series of the things that you've been working on in discrete trial, and you will now introduce them as they appropriately appear in the natural environment. So it's, in my mind, if you just do natural environment training, you're slow, because you need to do discrete trial in order to be able to teach things fast and then to generalize them using natural environment training. So that's kind of a phase after discrete trial. Pivotal response training, PRT, is a procedure of picking the most, or what's called the pivotal response, or the response that is probably the most critical or crucial, or the one that actually causes all other responses to change, and teaching that one first. And so these are, if you want to know more about, so it is also a type of ABA, and anything that depends on modification of the antecedent or consequence is ABA. Anything where behavior increases because you reward it is ABA. So pivotal response training is ABA, and you can learn a lot more about that just by looking up pivotal response. It's a number of people just started to do that and went into PRT, and that the name that is associated with that is Koegel, Koegel. Those folks are at UC Santa Barbara. There's a Koegel Autism Center there, and they are it's sort of it's a style of doing ABA. So you can read more about that. And FBA, functional behavior assessment, is when a child develops a behavior or exhibits a behavior. It is part of that. This is not a type of ABA now. It's an assessment. So what it is it's you want to try to find the function of a behavior. So let's say a child might hit. There's many reasons why they're hitting. They could hit because they want to get an object from you. That's called tangible function. They might hit because they're trying to avoid something you told them to do. So that would be an escape or an avoidance function. They might hit just because they like the reaction they get out of you. That's an attention function. So there's different functions, and this is very important because for each of those you intervene in a different way. So if I'm hitting you because I want to grab an object out of your hand, then the intervention would be that you don't let the child get the object, because if they get the object, they will now learn that hitting was effective. If I'm hitting you because I want attention, I want to make sure that I don't give them attention, because if I do give attention, the child will learn that hitting got them attention and it was effective, and so on. So an FBA is a behavioral assessment that any behavior analyst will do in order to identify exactly why a behavior is happening, a challenging behavior or a behavior is happening, and to modify it. Okay. So that kind of summarizes things. You're beginning to do our ABA. You probably want to have a provider who can explain all of that to you, and I guess effective will be a provider that's doing a combination of something like discrete trial followed by NET.
And they're using skills, so
Great.
They can be using skills to do all of these things. And if you need to, there's also consultation available with skills.
Absolutely. And good Lord, I don't know why I went through all that. You should just go on IBT and find the modules for all of these. There's if you look at Institutes for Behavioral Training, there you will find a whole module on what is DTT. You'll have a module on what is NET. There's a module on FBA. There's probably a module describing what pivotal response is. We don't do pivotal response, but at CARD we do everything else. And RDI might be under the other interventions section. I don't know. But, okay. I mean, you'll really get a good comprehensive understanding of ABA.
I'm glad we got to go through that. But I now have 3 questions I want to squeeze into 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, and thanks for a great show. My adult son has been taking things that don't belong to him. I know he knows better and has never had issues with this, but any suggestions? He is of moderate intelligence, and thank you.
Gosh, that's a little bit hard. It really has to do, and maybe I can help you through this weekend. Next week you can answer some questions for me. What happens when he takes things that don't belong to him? Is he getting to keep them? Is he getting punished? Is he getting away with it? What happens? And what are these things exactly? Are they things that are very meaningful to him? So, theoretically what you would do is you would make sure that whatever it is that he's taking that doesn't belong to him, if it's something that he really wants, you try to give him access to that of his own. In other words, let's say it's some sort of toy or candy or I don't know what, you would make sure he has his own. And obviously if he takes something that it doesn't belong to him, he has to have a response cost, so some form of punishment or take something away from him when he does that. I don't know if his I really don't know if his functioning level would allow you to explain to him things like what are the wrong and right. and that you don't want to do things that hurt other people. So,
but send us in some answers
Yeah.
about what the consequences are so we can address this at the top of next week's show. Next one. Hi, ladies. I have 4 children, 2 typical and 2 on the spectrum.
God.
They all push each other's buttons constantly. I'm sure they push your buttons too. And she goes on to say, I'm going out of my mind.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Is there something I can do at home to help them to want to help each other, or at least be nice to each other? I don't expect them to all be angels, or for the boys to stop being physical, but there has to be something we can try. We had a marble jar, but that didn't work. I'm desperate for advice. Thanks.
Honest, you need help. Like, I can't even, I don't know how you're functioning right now. Yes, of course, you can set up like little task charts for each one.
They have apps now that you can
absolutely.
that reward them.
Yeah, totally.
And they can pick their reward. There are crazy apps out there about that.
And I don't know if kids, depending on the age, whether they like apps more or just the visual, physical thing on the wall, but when you're in the middle of chaos, setting up any kind of token system is just not going to work, because there's too much going on and they're getting away with stuff. Because once you set up a token system, you have to have the ability to follow through. In other words, if there was a marble jar where they received a marble for good behavior, but it was complete chaos, either nobody was receiving marbles or they were getting marbles even when they had sneakily done something. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't manage it. So what I really suggest you do is please try to get help. I don't know where you are, but wherever you are these days, it's possible to get help. So, you know, if you're in California, the very first thing I would say is you need respite. Right. If you're in another state, you really should hopefully be getting ABA for your kids. Most states have coverage now. Write in and tell me where you are, or let us what state, what city, and then we can try to get you actually some help. Because I think if nothing else, you need to get a babysitter who goes through IBT and gets some basic behavioral training in order to assist with managing them.
Absolutely. And our last one.
And then of course we would help you set up a token system. Another thing you can do is go on the IBT modules, Institute for Behavioral Training, and look at the token economy module, because that will help you with things that are similar to a marble jar.
Yeah, because token economies only work if you work it the right way.
Exactly.
So behavioral training, there is one just on token economies. Okay, and the last one was a follow-up about the unexpected crash, bang, boom, whatever, what the behavior was, the freaking out.
Oh, yes.
They're friends of ours from Florida, and they said that it's anything unexpected becomes negative or bad, and that what she does is throw things. That's what her freaking out is, that she throws things. Is there anything you would change about your answer knowing that?
Totally. I would set it up. So I would set it up and prevent her from throwing things.
Okay.
So you have someone who's your Confederate do a startling noise. You know about it, but she doesn't.
Right.
And then you're standing close enough to her that when it happens, you block her from throwing something. You prevent her from throwing something, and then you reinforce the non-throwing behavior.
All right. So, love that. Fabulous.
Yeah. And in fact, you might actually want to teach her something. And what will happen is the minute you let go, then she'll try to walk over and throw something. Throwing, remember, is usually treated with overcorrection, which means you will go back and forth. If she throws something, you go over to where she threw it and dump 50 more things, and then she has to keep bringing each one back.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. Not fun. All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
We didn't get to all the questions, but we will be able to answer some of them tomorrow with some of the experts that we have tomorrow, and we will continue answering them next week. But thank you so much for all of your wisdom and expertise.
Thank you. Lovely being here.
We are going to take a break now and go to the A Word. That's an ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following a luscious little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. This is a really great series, and at this point where we're going to drop in and see him and his family, he's beginning to learn how to appropriately get attention, and we're seeing a lot of wonderful things happen for this family. So watch this, and then when we come back, we're showing you a recorded version of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy with our guest, Andrew Wakefield, who's talking about the Alex Spourdalakis case, and then I will be back at the end of the show to close out the show. So don't go anywhere. First, here's the A Word.
A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, talking a lot this morning.
Now my pieces next time.
Won't you?
No say with me.
That's right, kiddo. Very good. Okay, Jack Riley, one more minute. Say okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to play something else for now? What do you want to play?
Hey, pancake.
You want to play pancakes? Oh, is this the sign for pancakes? What do you want to work for, Jack Riley? Do you want to work for puzzle, for trains, for jumping on the bed? What do you want to work for? More jumping? Okay.
Pancake. Pancake.
Okay. Sit down. Sit down. Here you go.
Pancake.
You want pancakes? Can you say that better? Say, I want pancakes.
I want pancake.
Should we go see where the pancakes are then?
Okay.
All right. Let's go find Dad. Come on. Come with me. Walk with me. And we'll go find Dad, okay? All right. Can you open the door? Turn. There you go. Nice. Let's go see where those pancakes are. Say, I'm hungry. Ask you quick questions, okay? All right. Okay, look. Okay. What's your name? No. What's your name? Nice job. How old are you? Good job. Sit down, though. Okay. Where do you live?
Jessica teaches Jack Riley other social ID questions such as where do you live and what's your last name.
There you go. Nice job. Here you go. Slow down. There you go.
Hi.
Aww.
You look cute. I love you.
Group kiss. Group kiss. Ready? 1, 2. Oh, nice hands.
Nice hands. Nice hands. Nice hands. Nice hands get you more attention than bad hands.
Big brother. Who's big brother?
Who's a big brother?
Yes.
Yes.
Where's the little sister?
Where's the little sister?
Where? Is she here? Is that
Right
little
there.
sister?
She's
There
right.
she
That's
is.
right.
Can she have a kiss? Can little sister have a kiss? Thank you.
I hope.
Jack Riley is needing less prompting to appropriately gain attention. Jessica only gestures to get him to ask. They introduced the skill about 7 weeks ago, and it's becoming less contrived and is occurring naturally in situations. Here's a look from 7 weeks ago, when Jessica first introduced gaining attention. In the beginning, she tempts Jack Riley with an item he wants, then prompts him the whole way, gesturing and physically showing him what to do and what to say.
Jessica. I want pancakes. Hey, look at me when you say it. Say, I want pancakes.
As time goes by and the skill becomes more natural, the prompting will completely fade away.
Ready? Okay, show them how you can use a straw. You gotta go all the way. Show me. There you go. Good job.
Feeding used to be very time-consuming and difficult for Cheryl and Mike. Jack Riley would swat away food fed to him and would refuse to self-feed. He now feeds himself and even uses a fork. His diet, though, is still limited, but it's growing. Drinking has also been an issue for Jack Riley. He's typically only drank out of baby bottles or bottles with a hard nipple top. They've tried getting Jack Riley to drink from a cup, but every time they would present it, he would try to lap it up like a cat, anticipating all the fluid to come rushing at him. Now they have introduced drinking from a straw, so he has an item to drink from that is age appropriate.
Now suck it up.
You did it!
You wanna do that again?
Yeah.
Wanna do that again?
One more time, and then you can play.
Okay.
Yay! Very good, Jack. There you go.
You guys got that exact same pitch level there. I don't know how you duplicate.
Do you want the purple iPhone? Okay.
Okay, what's the matter?
You can have applesauce.
Hey.
You can have it. You can have it. Come here. Can you show me? Bite for mommy.
Your turn. Do you know? Jack Riley, say, I don't want banana. Okay. What do you want then? What do you want then? I want. Okay. Can we have a spoon, Daddy?
One of the food items Jack Riley eats a lot of are bananas. For some reason, though, seeing a banana really upsets Jack Riley. He enjoys eating it, but hates the sight of it. One of the issues is that biting solid food is very aversive to him.
Fear of the banana. Someday we'll tell him he eats one every day.
More awareness than it was in the yogurt, so we have to go in baby steps. That's fine with me.
This is history. I might drink the whole thing.
With like, no prompting, no.
Get off of this.
You're right.
Okay, kiddos. See ya. Have a good weekend.
Say thanks, Miss Jessica.
You say bye. Can you say bye, Jessica?
Look at her. Where is Jessica? Where is Jessica? There she is.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Just in case you were wondering.
You're Jessica. You are.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a great weekend,
See ya.
Jessica.
Good morning and welcome to Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Hi, my friend.
It's so great to have you here, and you're just a spitfire today.
Yeah, I was saying, is this too busy for the set? I don't know. I don't usually wear patterns.
I think you look great.
All right, well, thank you.
Wonderful.
Well, you know, I'm always proud of my sales. $38.
I love that.
I'm taking you shopping one day to all my bargain places.
Yes, but it'll have to be for the big girl shop.
I don't care.
I can't squeeze into the little girl clothes like you can.
There's more outfits for the big girls. And not that you're
Where
big.
are you shopping? Because I don't find that.
I'm taking you. Let's just leave it at that. We'll
My
talk about
voice
it
just
after
went
the
up
show.
7 octaves.
Yeah,
Did you hear
but
that?
you're not that big. You're probably the average size of the American woman.
Well, but I'm bigger than the average thing in the shop.
But all right, I just want to say one thing about being small.
Yes.
I always say thank you that I am small. I don't have problems with, well, I do have a little problem with the midsection. You know, we all do at my age, 58. But my mother was really tiny. But let me tell you, when you're really tiny, when you're older, you look like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, and you become just a piece of bone and a hank of hair. So it's not that pretty when you get older. I'm telling you. You know, they say it's either the face or the...
Well, I'm telling you, when you're this size and you get older, you become a Shar-Pei puppy, so that's not good either. You really don't want to go there either. So,
all right, but
I'd
let's
like
talk
to be
about autism.
How about if we talk about autism?
People are now calling us the Lucy and Ethel of the autism world.
Yes, and I'm thrilled. If somebody said, I told this to somebody, they said, well, which one are you? And I said, oh, I am Ethel. I am completely Ethel. Here we have our Lucy.
And then somebody told me we're the Kathy Lee and Hoda. And I said, please don't make me Kathy Lee. God love her.
Well, and somebody also had said that to me, and I said, are we going to have to come in without our makeup on one day?
And drink wine in the morning.
Well, good luck with that.
Okay.
If I were to drink wine, that would be the end of the conversation because I can't do that. But we have an exciting guest who's going to be on the show today.
I'm so excited.
Dr. Andrew Wakefield is going to be with us via Skype in just a few minutes. But we have some news that we wanted to cover before we did that.
Yes, and we have a wonderful story, and I think some of you out there, our viewers, might have contributed to this.
Okay.
An update on the opposition of Mr. Clank's show of support on change.org. We talked to you about this. We encouraged all of you to go to change.org for a little boy named Jonah who is not allowed to bring his service dog to school. A young boy with autism. And we just received word from the mother. Great news. She met for nearly 2 hours. This was about 2 days ago, I think, 3 days ago, this morning to discuss the issue of Jonah's service dog. What we have all agreed to, pending the lawyer drafting a letter, you guys always got to have the lawyers, they run everything, identifying all the points we agreed upon, and all of us signing it, is for Clank to be able to attend school with Jonah full-time up until the winter break. At that time, an identified group of people, all of whom represent a different area of Jonah's educational or home life, will convene to determine whether the dog is having a positive impact on Jonah's overall school experience. I am 100% fine with this solution. I do believe that we all heard one another clearly. We're all committed to making this happen. Thank you to all of you who have helped us in so many ways. It's so great to have people praying for us, signing petitions, carrying signs, waving a thumbs up. You are all wonderful, and she means you. Thank you.
What a
we helped.
wonderful story. Great ending, and I love that they're going to reevaluate.
Yes, they should.
That's absolutely
Nobody
what should
in an
happen. Makes
IEP,
sense.
we always reevaluate goals and what services are being provided, as is really important with every child.
Absolutely. Congratulations. We're thrilled for Mr. Clank and for Jonah and for his parents. Another story that was in the news about a beautiful young woman who is blazing new trails in the fashion world. I'm talking about Carrie Brown, a 17-year-old who has Down syndrome, and she has scored a big modeling job with Wet Seal.
I'm so excited for this young woman.
Isn't this a lovely, lovely story?
This is such a great story. Her name is Carrie Brown. I think you said she's 17 years old.
And we've got a picture of her. I bet that's her Z card.
Isn't she darling?
She's absolutely beautiful. And kudos to her mom, who set up a Facebook page of her daughter doing modeling. And now, big client, Wet Seal, that she's going to be featured in. They've got a new line that, for us plus-size ladies, as we were talking about the plus-sizers before, it all dovetails back together.
That's right. And I will bet you anything, more people will buy Wet Seal because of this.
I will be going to Wet Seal to see if they have something that will look fashionable on me. Because of this.
I think, I love this. They flew her to LA for the photo shoot. She asked for Justin Bieber music to play during the shoot so she could sing and dance while shooting. Down syndrome kids are the most loving children. I mean, I was blessed with a Down syndrome brother, David.
Yes.
Most loving children on earth. And they told ABC News it was so much fun. She was a natural in front of the camera. And it says also, which you'll love this, showcasing women of all shapes, sizes, and colors is getting more and more standard for various stores and fashion lines, if recent campaigns by Diesel and H&M are any indication. So look out for Wet Seal, look out for Carrie Brown, and thank you to the retailers for realizing not everybody is smaller than I am.
Absolutely. And those pictures featuring Carrie on Wet Seal will be coming up in the next few weeks, so keep an eye on their website, Wet Seal.
Maybe, well, she's not from LA. Maybe we could do a Skype with Carrie.
Or maybe the next time she's in town, we'll have to have her in the studio.
Good to me.
But congratulations to all of us, and especially to Carrie and her mom. Okay, another new study that came out, and very interesting, from SUNY Buffalo State University about play. And I found this really interesting because we've been doing a lot of legwork around the studio getting ready for the holidays.
Yes.
We have something called the Festival of Toys coming up. It's very exciting, and we've been talking to a lot of different toy manufacturers. We're going to have a lot of giveaways. But really, I don't know about you, but I'm always interested to know what kinds of things will help our kids to play, be educational, and that will be reinforcing for them.
Exactly. That's the trick.
Isn't it? And so they did a little study. They got a group of children together at a children's museum, and they called it the Awesome Night, an awesome evening, excuse me. And they did some research about what kinds of play were really reinforcing for the kids on the autism spectrum. And what they found was that things that involve repetitive motions, lots of sensory feedback, and cause and effect results. Things that you do something and it makes a noise, or there's something that you can see that happens, were really reinforcing to kids on the spectrum, which I think that makes a great deal of sense, don't you, Nancy?
It makes a lot of sense. I have had a really hard time identifying board games that Wyatt likes, but he does like board games. So I'm really interested to see what kind of board games that we've got coming up, if we have any of those.
We do.
Okay, great. And then I'm starting to see Wyatt. I'm revisiting some things that we used to do that weren't successful. And let me tell you one of them, a very basic little fun game, hide and seek.
Yeah.
He used to not get that the seeker had to count and then say ready or not, and the hider You know, he wouldn't quite get it. He would count to like 3 and run, or he would not count, and he would yell, "Where are you? Where are you?" And I would say, "No, you don't ask them where they are. They're hiding," you know. But we have started using it with our afternoon ABA to teach counting skills, because we up the counting. We're like, this time just 10, next time 20, next time 50, next time 100, and next time 118. So we've been doing that.
Right.
And we've also been using it when he's hiding to have him learn new areas and new vocabulary.
Fabulous.
So it really just happened.
Yeah.
So I urge parents to maybe take a look at things that you may think of as elementary, or, you know, but maybe reintroduce and have fun with them again. Just because your child couldn't do it 5 years ago, 2 years ago, doesn't mean they can't have fun with that game now.
Yeah, absolutely. Revisit some of the oldies with the goodies.
And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a parent was, never think that just because your child rejects a sport, a game, or an activity the first time, that they will always reject it.
Yeah, it's a lot like food.
Figure out ways to incrementally do ABA with it.
Yep.
And actually, Lisa Ackerman, our friend from TACA, head of TACA, saw her on Monday at a big reception where we both received a grant from the Allergan Foundation. She said that her son is running. He's doing 5Ks. I said, how in the world did you get him to do that? Because I'd love for Wyatt to run. He could take off a few pounds. She said, I did a total ABA approach.
Awesome.
I rewarded him. She said it literally started with running, 50 yards.
Okay.
So it can be done. Stick with it.
There you go. Great, great advice. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. We have a very special guest who's going to be with us today to talk about a documentary that he's involved with. Of course, we're talking about Dr. Andrew Wakefield.
Yes.
Now, I have to say, before we go to break, that it's very important, a lot of the things that we cover here come with a certain amount of controversy. This story comes with a certain amount of controversy. Dr. Wakefield comes with a certain amount of controversy. And I want to remind everybody, at the beginning of the show, we play a segment that reminds everyone that all of our guests on the show have their own opinions, that they do not reflect on our opinions, on our sponsors' opinions, on the Center for Autism and Related Disorders' opinions. I think that everyone has a basic understanding of that. That goes for every single guest that we have on the show, but I want to remind everybody, we're thrilled to be able to talk about this very important topic with Dr. Wakefield. We welcome your comments, your questions to come in during the show, but I want to remind everybody that different opinions expressed here are the opinions of the people who have them coming out of their mouth, and that is it.
That's right.
It is in no way meaning that anybody agrees with anyone or disagrees for that matter.
Yes.
So there we have it.
It all is in line with our belief that you need to get all the information you can and then make the decision about what is best for your child, or what also you put your belief system behind, right?
Absolutely. And we are here to impart information and impart news. And so that is our goal. And we count on you to be the intelligent souls that you are and make the decisions that you want to do and make the assumptions that you want to.
Well said, my friend.
Having said that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports. Things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that, they wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community. Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism. As Shannon and I told you before the break, we are joined now by Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who is coming to us live from London. Dr. Andrew Wakefield is an academic gastroenterologist. He is an autism advocate, and now we can add filmmaker to his list of accomplishments. Welcome to the show, Dr. Wakefield.
Hi, it's great to be with you.
And we need to mention briefly that we had hoped to have picture and sound with Dr. Wakefield, but unfortunately we're challenged a little bit today going across the ocean, so we will have just sound for Dr. Wakefield, but thrilled to have you with us. You're a very important part of a documentary that's being made, a story that we have been covering here on the show. The name of the film is Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis? Did I say it right?
That's absolutely right, yes.
Okay. And Dr. Wakefield, what would you like people to know about this film?
Well, this is an extraordinary story and a terrible tragedy. It's one that we were following the story of this child before. And so it's unique in documentary history. In other words, we filmed in real time the events, all the events that led up to his death, and that's most unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're able to do is pinpoint the events that led to this tragedy. And it's not what anyone may imagine unless they, of course, live with the difficulties of autism. And encapsulated into this child's short life and tragic death are all the iniquities and injustices faced by families with autism, the hardships, the difficulties they face on a day-to-day basis, the medical establishment ignoring the parental story, the child's symptoms, making the wrong call, giving the child the wrong drugs, and eventually leading, I believe, to catastrophe. And that's the purpose of this documentary, is to bring out all of the elements that contributed to the death of this child. In other words, that is the purpose of the meaning behind the title, Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis? It is not as simple as his mother or his godmother committed the act. There are many things that contributed to the death of this child.
Well, Dr. Wakefield, that was so eloquently summed up. We'd like to know, before we go to break, we're going to come back and talk in depth about the film and the making of the film. Can you tell us, before we go to break, how can people support this film?
Well, it's very kind of you. We are running currently an Indiegogo campaign, one of the crowdsourcing campaigns, which you can go to on indiegogo.com. And that's INDIEGOGO.com, and type in under search Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis and find the campaign there with a description and a short introduction, a video introduction.
All right, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to go through the timeline of events that led up to this tragic, tragic death of a young man, 14 years old, on the autism spectrum. We are talking with Dr. Andrew Wakefield, and we will continue doing that after these messages. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We are speaking with Dr. Andrew Wakefield, live from London. And Dr. Wakefield is telling us about the documentary he is making called Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis? And I hope I said the name right. And Dr. Wakefield, we talked about the basic concept behind the documentary and the fact that you were there in real time as this story unfolded. So what we'd like to do now is have you go back and give us, as close as possible, a timeline of events that led up to Alex's death.
Certainly. As a sort of prelude to that, I remember I wrote in my first book that when I first became involved in autism in 1995-96, I was confronted with a tragedy where a mother had taken her child in the north of England, and they had jumped off her autistic child, they jumped off a viaduct 180 feet to their death. And I read this in the newspapers, and I was utterly shocked that this should have happened, that society should have allowed this to happen. And this mother was being pursued by social services at the time. But I was determined that was one of the motivating factors that got me involved in autism, because clearly something had gone terribly, terribly badly wrong that this should happen.
May I just interject to say that you use that as the foreword for your book, and I heard you do a reading of that, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room, and I don't think there's a mother alive of a child with autism that did not empathize with this mother. So I just want to insert that.
Thank you. And that, what's so sad, Nancy, is that all these years on, here we are with another story. In fact, within 2 weeks of this child's death, I think there were another 2 stories reported, very similar stories. But we became involved. Many people first came to learn about this story when it broke on Fox News in Chicago, and the child had been in restraints for 21 days.
We're talking about Alex.
We're talking about Alex. We're back to Alex Spourdalakis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alex Spourdalakis. So this was in the early weeks of 2013. He had been in 4-point locked restraint for 21 days and was clearly suffering from gastrointestinal distress. Yes. His mother kept saying to them, please, please, he's medically sick, he's medically unwell, he was vomiting, he had diarrhea, he couldn't keep his food down. And
they had put, excuse me, Dr. Wakefield, but they had put him in restraints in the emergency room because he was self-injurious. Is that correct?
Self-injurious, and they had said that he was a threat. He he became violent, and as many parents recognize, self-injury or violence to others in non-verbal children who cannot communicate in any other way, is often a manifestation of a child in pain who is trying to communicate that pain. And this is something that we have learned. It's been a bitter lesson that we've had to learn over the years, is that many of these children have been suffering for a long time without appropriate medical intervention because the medical profession do not understand how communication works with children who are non-verbal and compromised by autism. So this child was in dire pain. His mother knew it. Instinctively she knew it. And of course there he was with diarrhea and vomiting. And he was initially had been at Gottlieb Hospital, a sister hospital to Loyola. They had no pediatric facilities there for him. So after a long delay, he was transferred to Loyola. He was transferred there specifically for gastrointestinal investigation, that is upper and lower endoscopy, with pediatric anesthesiology. And those facilities were not available at the former hospital, Gottlieb. So when he got there, nothing happened, and he was eventually seen by a pediatric gastroenterologist who stood apparently in the doorway, did not approach the child, did not examine him, stood there for 5 minutes listening to the mother's history and left. And that was it. A few days later, a Spanish doctor came in and examined him and said, yes, indeed, he needs not only an upper scope, but a lower scope as well, and planned to perform it. Well, a few days after that, her boss came in, Dr. Berman, and apparently said to the mother, there is no need for any gastrointestinal investigation. If we heal his mind, we can heal his body. And that was the message that the mother was left with. And many
I believe we've lost him.
Oh, no.
Have you lost
There we are.
Oh, no, you're back.
You're
You're back.
Now we've got you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
So some mothers became involved from a group called Autism is Medical.
Mm-hmm.
And we were contacted to ask if we could help out. Now, the obvious first step was to get this child to an expert like Dr. Krigsman in New York for scoping and diagnosis so that appropriate treatment could be instituted. So we flew up, we drove him 19 hours or so through the night to New York. An extraordinary journey in as much that we were there with the mother and the godmother, who clearly loved him dearly, with Polly, with a Marine.
Polly Tomey, let's clarify, Dr. Wakefield. Polly is Polly Tomey.
And you and Polly together are the heads of the Autism Media channel, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And who else was with you? Keep going.
We had a Marine in the back, Jimmy, an ex-Marine who was looking after Alex and keeping him calm. Alex could not wear any clothes, so he traveled naked during the winter months through the hills of Pennsylvania, the mountains of Pennsylvania, to New York. It was absolutely extraordinary. The rest of us were freezing to death, and Alex would not keep any clothes on. We eventually got him to New York, where he was seen by Dr. Krigsman. He was then investigated appropriately. And I remember the moment that Dr. Krigsman put the gastroscope into his stomach, though it was studded with ulcers, hundreds of ulcers throughout his stomach, a kind of ulceration that would have had you and I in agony on the floor. And this child had been putting up with this for a very long time. And when he broke the story to Alex's mother, she just broke down. It was so distressing because it was the realization that she had been right all along, and yet she had been unable to prevail upon the medical profession to treat him appropriately.
Now, Dr. Wakefield, I'm going to stop you for just 1 second to clarify. So at this point, you and Polly have been brought into this case to not only help, but you've decided to document finding out what is going on with this child. And at this point, was it your intention to document how he received help and got better?
Yes, it was. And in fact, it's a very good point you raise. This was part of an ongoing reality show series that we were creating of a before and after, taking children who were clearly severely compromised, who were undiagnosed in terms of the medical aspects of their problem, and putting together the best people that I've come across in autism over the last 18 years, including, of course, Doreen
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Absolutely. Yes. So she is a member of this, what we call the autism team, the A-team.
Yes, we're familiar with that, and we're going to help you identify children that fit that prototype.
Trying to help families get access, get answers, and get access to therapies. So you're there and you're filming this in real time, finding out that Alex is full of ulcers. The mom is understandably both upset and relieved to know that we've got some answers, I would imagine, but overwhelmed with how long this must have been going on. Pick up the timeline for us there. So what happens at that point?
So at that point, he now is, we're able to, Dr. Krigsman is able to put him on the appropriate therapy, and he was started on a full gluten casein-free diet. He was started on proper nutritional supplementation and anti-inflammatory medication. The problem came is that he went back to Chicago with his mother, and there was nowhere for them to go. There was nowhere where he could remain in a safe haven where the treatment could be instituted properly. The mother, the father, and the mother had become estranged. And what was very, very difficult for Alex is going back to the apartment from which he had been taken by the authorities, because every time he heard a siren, he had a meltdown. He could not handle that. And
the sensory overload, obviously, was too much.
And the memory of sirens and being tied up, and it was too much. So they went from hotel to motel. He was noisy. He was violent. They couldn't stay in one place for any more than a couple of nights. It simply wasn't working. And he would never sleep. And the mother and the godmother had not really slept properly for three months or more.
And you were filming some of this. Were you able to get there to Chicago from time to time to film what was happening?
Yes, we were. What was happening is that they were documenting it by iPhone, for example, and we flew back around the time of Autism 1, the Autism 1 conference, tragically to learn that he was back in hospital. What had happened is that he'd been given a diagnosis It appears he'd been given a diagnosis of Lyme disease without any testing, and as a consequence of that had been put on some powerful antibiotics. With the second antibiotic, he had a major deterioration and was readmitted, this time to Lutheran Hospital. We went to see him in Lutheran, and it was a tragic sight. The mother was completely broken. The godmother had a huge black eye. Where Alex had lashed out, not out of violence, but just inadvertently lashed out and hit her, and he was tied to the bed again, and it was a terrible situation. And we put out an appeal on the internet. Sadly, it didn't come in time, and what I think will horrify people, particularly in light of what's going on in healthcare in the States at the moment, is that we got a last text from Dorothy saying, we have been told by our insurance company there is no further funding, we're being put on the street, there is nowhere to go, we don't know what's going to happen. That was a week before his death. So here is a child who's in 4-point lock restraints, had required intravenous sedation apparently, and suddenly someone decides that there's no more funding for his care. Moments earlier they were going to put him into a long-term psychiatric institution. Now suddenly he's on the street. And at some point thereafter, and we now have a series of communications of that intervening week, things just spiraled out of control, and there must have been a point at which she decided that enough was enough, that she could no longer bear the suffering for any of them, and they took his life. Yeah. They tried to kill themselves, and
yes,
did not.
And let's clarify, Dr. Wakefield, that when you say she'd had enough, she had had enough for the whole family, herself, the grandmother, and Alex, correct? Because she did try to take her own. The caregiver, I'm sorry.
Yes. The caregiver was his godmother, and yes, it was an attempted murder-suicide, and it failed. And in fact, we went to see them in Cook County maximum security prison, and the greatest tragedy for them was waking up. The worst thing of all. They said this should never have happened. We don't remember anything about it, but we never wanted to wake up.
Right. It was their intention to take their own lives.
It is such a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Horrible tragedy. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Dr. Wakefield, we're going to talk about some of the controversy surrounding even the telling of this story, as different news outlets have covered this film that you're making. So for those of you watching, stick with us more with Dr. Andrew Wakefield after these messages.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with that.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Our very special guest on the phone all the way from London is Dr. Andrew Wakefield. We're talking with him about a documentary that he's involved with the making of called Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis? And they were on the ground covering in real time this family, the intention to cover how this child was going to improve once he was given the right therapies.
Proper medical treatment.
Yes.
That would address many of his behavioral issues he was having that were medically based.
Right,
so,
and that was their intention that while they were filming, but unfortunately, before enough help could be given to them, the mother and the caregiver attempted to, well, they murdered Alex and they attempted to commit suicide as well. So we wanted to pause for just a second. We're going to ask Dr. Wakefield to go through with us the events of how Alex died. It's very gruesome. We want to warn you, if you're watching with small children, now would be a time to have them get out of the room.
Definitely.
We think it's important to talk about what happened, but it is particularly gruesome. So Dr. Wakefield, walk us through what happened on that day.
Right. I think that just to set the scene, the reason that we are so concerned about this story is that if we are to understand how to prevent these cases occurring in the future, we have to analyze this in great deal. What were the events that precipitated the catastrophe? Alex, and the other thing to say is that the news reports we have discovered are largely wrong. Okay. Many of the details provided by the sort of early knee-jerk news reports are not in fact true. What appears to have happened is that Alex was given an overdose by his mother or the caregiver, that they then took an overdose themselves. It became clear that, at least from what we're told, that he was not. The overdose was insufficient or of the wrong medication to achieve the effect that they had intended, and they ended up stabbing him in the heart, certainly his mother. Now, it is said that there was a confession. However, that does not appear to be the case, and certainly when we talked to them in Cook County Penitentiary, then they'd woken up in different places apparently. They had not conferred on their story. They'd been kept separate ever since then, had not had a chance to talk, but both of them said exactly the same thing, and that is, we do not remember anything about the events leading up to it or until we woke up. We remember nothing at all. So there are many holes in this story that you have yet to be filled in, and those will be available. The rest of that story will become clear as the documentary emerges. We now have elements of that now bring the story together and tell the full tale of what happened.
Well, let me ask you this, because what was reported was that Alex was stabbed several times. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding, but again, the precise number is certainly unknown.
And then did his mother, after the overdose failed, did she inflict wounds upon herself, and did the caregiver inflict wounds upon herself?
No, we have no evidence to suggest that is the case.
Okay.
But what also was reported that when the stabbings in the chest area and the heart weren't being effective, that they also slashed Alex's wrists. Is that
Again,
accurate?
we have no evidence on that at the moment.
Okay.
We will be discussing that.
And additionally, they reported that they killed the cat as well.
Apparently the cat, it was not dead.
Okay.
That, again, was a failure in the reporting.
Okay. Dr. Wakefield, did you have any idea that Dorothy was this desperate and that she was planning to take Alex's life and her own?
I didn't. However, having encountered this degree of desperation in the past in autism parents, this degree of sleeplessness, this was an extreme situation, and that was the reason when we were with them at Lutheran, we put out a plea on the internet for some safe haven for them to go, for him to be put on the right medication and to see that treatment regimen through. We felt terribly frustrated. We felt that they had been let down, that we as well had let them down, that somehow there was a missing piece of this jigsaw, and that this was not going to end well the way it was going. And sadly, that turned out to be true in an extreme way.
Well, Dr. Wakefield, this film has not yet been completed, but it's already sparking controversy. Recently, when CBS Morning News reported on this story, there was a bit of backlash where self-advocate groups felt that the story and your documentary were condoning, saying that it was justified after what the mother had gone through, the killing of a young person on the autism spectrum. Do you have any response to those critics?
Well, the desire of certain groups, including autism advocate Erin Neiman, is that this was a hate crime, should be labelled as a hate crime, and the mother and the godmother should be charged accordingly. It's interesting they say that knowing absolutely nothing whatsoever about the background or about the mother at all. In other words, his position is that there is a view that children who are autistic are better off dead. That is absolutely not the case. And what was clear to us throughout the filming of this is how much she loved him, how much she cared for him. And there's absolutely nothing in this that smacks of a hate crime. This was a crime of passion, most certainly. And it was a crime, no question. And justice must be done, but it must be seen in context of what actually precipitated it. And it was not a hate crime at all.
But to be clear, you're not suggesting in any way, shape, or form, you know, being aware of what Dorothy went through and what the caregiver went through, you're not condoning an autism parent taking their child's life for any circumstances, correct?
Absolutely not. The reason for doing this, the reason for doing it is if we are going to prevent these events in the future, we have to understand what led to them. And sort of comments that are plucked out of the air like hate crime are totally unhelpful. What we need to understand is why this child was in pain, why his suffering was allowed to continue, why he was put on multiple psychotropic medications that made his condition worse without addressing his medical needs. What were the events that led to his death? In other words, who killed Alex Spourdalakis?
So you're advocating, let's be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Absolutely. This must not be allowed to continue. And the way to prevent that is to understand its origins.
Okay, and the way that people can help to support, if they would choose to help support this film.
Once again.
You're asking for them to participate in your Indiegogo account, correct?
It's Indiegogo campaign, Indiegogo.com. And the title is Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis?
Can you give us an update, Dr. Wakefield, on where Dorothy is today, where the caregiver is, and what are the consequences of this tragic situation right now?
Yes, I went to see them appear in court 2 weeks ago in Chicago. They are currently still in Cook County maximum security, at least as far as I'm aware. They are kept apart. They have submitted pleas of not guilty. Dorothy on the basis of insanity or temporary insanity, I believe. And we've had long discussions with various lawyers involved in the case, which has been most helpful.
And what is she charged with, Dr. Wakefield?
She's charged with first-degree murder. I think they're seeking the maximum penalty on the basis that Alex had special needs and therefore was particularly vulnerable. So they are looking for a life term in prison on the prosecution side.
We are almost out of time, but we had some people who wrote in on Facebook a couple of comments for you. One person wanted us to tell you, they said thank you and that we appreciate all that he does. Another parent wrote in and said, what can parents do on a national level to advocate, because the 1 in 54 will soon mean that neurotypically typical students will be in the minority, and as a result to start coursework training teachers and administrators now. Would you like to comment on that quickly?
Well, I think it's such an important, it's projected that by 2025, 1 in 2 children in this country will have autism. That's a staggering level of disease. It's totally unacceptable. And you have an entire country, an entire economy devoted to the care of children with autism. Something has got to be done. And if this film helps to bring attention to the various elements that conspire to cause autism and impede its adequate medical care, then that is a good thing. Can only be a good thing.
Well, Dr. Wakefield, we thank you. I wish we had more time. There are many more things we could talk about.
Yes.
But we'll have to find another time to do that. But we thank you so much for being with us.
We thank you, and Dr. Wakefield, our best wishes to you in completing this and in your efforts to assist getting the real story out. And thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Goodbye.
Certainly, it brings to mind, that there are more families that are out there that need more help, and making sure that this kind of tragedy doesn't happen again.
Shannon, I just have to say that I am so close to this story because I hear from parents every day. running autism care and treatment today, I hear horror stories, and sometimes we don't know the full picture. It's so easy to judge. And I think what is really important here is that we look at all the facts. And it really is a giant warning for us to pay attention to this epidemic. And I know we can both say that for us, there have been moments of complete desperation. You know, I call it the kitchen floor club, where we've all been down on our knees after a tantrum, after, you know, something with our child that has made us beg for help. And if that can happen to me, and if that can happen to you, we know there are families out there suffering enormously. So I think just saying we have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. The conversation will continue on this. And my prayers are with everyone involved, and God bless Alex.
And if you are one of those people and you are in a place of desperation, please ask for help and continue asking for help. There is no excuse for taking your child's life.
There isn't. And ACT Today, you know, we try desperately to raise money. When we give out grants, we look at the most needy situations. We do have a rating system. And I can only think, why couldn't we have helped this family if I had known?
And we all do what we can, which we have like 30 seconds. Can you tell very quickly about one of the things that you're doing?
One of the things that I'm doing, if you happen to live in the Los Angeles area, I have my church, the Prince of Peace Episcopal Church in Woodland Hills. We are starting an exceptional families ministry. Children with special needs, the most underserved church community. Please contact me at nancy@act-today.org. And if you're interested in this, on October 19th, we're going to be doing it every month.
We're out of time, but thank you so much. Give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Fascinating conversation.
Welcome back. And so we're here at the end of the show. We just ended one show and we want to end this show. So I want to thank you for being with us here today and remind you that tomorrow we will have Dr. Del Nadowski and Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we're going to continue to answer questions and talk about social skills. We're totally out of time. I want to remind you to give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.